You can listen to The Professional Left wherever you get your podcasts, on Netroots Radio or at our website, proleftpod.com, where you can also contribute to this podcast. There's a PayPal button at our website, or you can mail us a letter and or contribution at P.O. Box 9133, Springfield, Illinois, 62791.
This is the podcast for September 2nd, 2025. It's not safe for work.
Recorded live from the Cornfield Resistance, where, to quote William Faulkner, the past is never dead. It's not even past. It's the Professional Left with Driftglass and Blue Gal.
And right off the bat, we're alienating potential Republican listeners by quoting some fancy Nobel. Is it Nobel or Noble, Driftglass?
I'm not sure.
Nobel Prize?
I have to ask the press secretary of the White House.
Yeah, Nobel Prize, I think she said. Nobel Prize winning American author. Even though Faulkner was a Southern lad, born and died in Mississippi. He died in 1962, just short of reaching Medicare eligibility age, which, of course, wouldn't come online until 3 years later. Thank you, Democrats. In July of 1965. So happy belated Medicare 60th anniversary, Driftglass.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm closing in on taking full advantage of all the socialism, Blue Gal.
Yes.
As you all know. Now, you know what else? We're going to go right on offending potential Republican listeners by quoting even more Faulkner. Yes, more Faulkner than you're going to get on any other political podcast. That's a guarantee. That's a Driftglass guarantee. And this is from his 1950 Nobel acceptance speech, which, ironically, we kind of saw a little bit of when we watched The Prize the other night with Paul Newman about the Nobel Committee and all the intrigue and spy that went on around there. Nobel acceptance speech, which is sometimes called the duty of the writer speech. So it seems very, very appropriate to our podcast. Quote, "It is easy enough to say that man is immortal simply because he will endure. That when the last ding-dong of doom has clanged and faded from the last worthless rock, hanging tideless in the last red and dying evening, that even then there will still be one more sound, that of his puny, inexhaustible voice, still talking." Man, Faulkner really did prefigure podcasting, didn't he?
Yes, he did.
Continuing, "I refuse to accept this. I believe that man will not merely endure, he will prevail. He is immortal not because he alone among creatures has an inexhaustible voice, but because he has a soul, a spirit capable of compassion and sacrifice and endurance. The poet's, the writer's duty is to write about these things. It is his privilege to help man endure by lifting his heart, by reminding him of the courage and honor and hope and pride and compassion and pity and sacrifice, which have been the glory of his past. The poet's voice need not merely be the record of man. It can be one of the props, the pillars that help him endure and prevail," unquote. Amen to that, goddammit.
Yeah.
Now,
and Faulkner didn't always write happy stories.
No, he wrote sad stories. He wrote tragedies. He's from the South, for God's sakes. It's pure tragedy. But, he knew what the writer's task was. And now with that in mind, we're going to start off today with something a little different. I'm going to read you a quote, and you're going to guess where it's from. Are you ready for the challenge?
I am ready.
Okay. This is a quote from another writer, another American writer. Quote, "One of the more spectacular results of this administration's insistence on lying about everything all the time is that they never go to much trouble to make sure that each lie matches the next, rather. This is because, to use a scientific explanation, they are unrepented, syphilitic dog whores," unquote.
Yes, I know what that is. That is, in fact, an excerpt from Daily Kos, which I quoted on my very own blog.
You did, because you're a blogger.
And I sent that to you this week also. So
you did. You're a blogger as well as a podcaster. And which of Trump's lies do you suppose prompted that Daily Kos writer to write that, and for which you gave it the coveted Don't Sugarcoat It award? Everyone wants that award. Nobel Prize.
Everyone wants the Don't Sugarcoat It award.
Nobel and Don't Sugarcoat It. Really pretty much dead heat.
Well, that's where you're wrong, Driftglass. It's not about Trump. Not at all. This is from a post of mine from 20 years ago this month, Thursday, September 8th, 2005.
Yeah.
The subject was the Bush administration's grotesquely botched response to Hurricane Katrina, which was also 20 years ago this month. Here's the full context of the Daily Kos quote. Quote, "There's one particular conservative talking point that made the blast facts today that's been absolutely omnipresent. The entirely false present premise," I can't even talk right now, "the entirely false premise that George W. Bush, man of the people, begged and pleaded with reluctant state officials to evacuate in front of the coming storm. Horse shit," unquote.
Yep. And man, you can tell it's 20 years ago because blast facts.
Blast facts, yeah.
Blast facts, baby. So when you tally up all the lying and the fatally criminal incompetence of the Bush administration's response to Hurricane Katrina, and the right's reflexively sadistic and openly racist contempt for those who were trapped in the New Orleans hellscape, and all the lies and the criminal incompetence and corruption that marked the Bush administration's botched war in Iraq, and the right's sadistic and openly racist contempt for innocent Iraqis trapped in Bush's debacle, and for, frankly, brown-skinned people generally, anytime, anywhere, and the right's all-out media war on anyone who opposed the war. Obviously, anyone with a shred of decency should have fled the Republican Party screaming 20 years ago. But you know what? By and large, they didn't, Blue Gal.
No.
They didn't.
And it reminds me of a lie that Hal Sparks has exposed this week. Not that you expose these things, but he highlighted it.
Yeah.
The big lie about Trump being missing for 4 days.
Right.
And the lie that Benny Johnson and a number of other conservative podcasters are saying, well, you know, Biden disappeared for weeks. Can you imagine what Sean Hannity would have done if Biden disappeared for weeks?
Well, they just make shit up.
Well, and they're confusing Joe Biden with Melania Trump, who did disappear for weeks.
Months.
To have some sort of, kidney surgery, I think it was?
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked before on this podcast about the difference between the everyday lying that Republicans do all day, every day, and what Driftglass has coined the load-bearing lies.
Mm-hmm.
These are the really big, important lies that prop up the whole Republican Party, which means these are the lies that the base is most deeply invested in defending. So what happens when load-bearing lies fail?
Mm-hmm.
With Bush, those lies were Iraq, Katrina, Terry Schiavo, and the collapse of the global economy. Yes, there were many, many other lies, but in the decades since, when a Democratic president is having some trouble, no one asks, is this Obama's Harriet Miers?
No.
They all ask, is this Obama's Katrina?
Right.
So to continue, Bush was sold to the base as a man of faith and business.
MBA. He had an MBA, Blue Gal.
And the 2004 campaign was all, he's a good Christian man. I'm voting because he's a good Christian man.
Mm-hmm.
And Bush's sound judgment could be trusted because he was surrounded by foreign and domestic policy experts like Dick Cheney and Karl Rove.
All of his daddy's people.
Yeah. And those four major public catastrophes blew every one of Bush's load-bearing lies away.
So the question is always, why wasn't there some kind of mass exodus from the Republican Party? Because the reason is because there was an even bigger load-bearing lie keeping the political status quo relatively stable. And let's all sing it together, shall we? It's the both sides do it. That's the big one. That's the big umbrella lie. And as you all know, the cardinal rule on the right since forever is to never, ever, under any circumstances, admit that you're wrong, ever. So,
can I interrupt you for a minute and ask you a question?
Of course.
Would you consider the Tea Party a mass exodus from the Republican Party?
No, I would consider it a mass rebranding of the Republican Party.
Yeah.
Because they held on to all their Republican values and virtues. Yep. They hated Barack Obama with as much racist fervor as anybody else in the base. No. They just didn't want to be held accountable for all the shit that they said and did. They just changed their name and pretended they weren't there, but they went right back to their worst habits. They never broke stride, really. So what do you do when all the load-bearing lies you put all your faith into, the God you worship, all roll over and die. What happens when your God dies? And, well, since you can't admit you're wrong, the first thing you try to do is rewrite the past and pretend it never happened.
Joe Biden was missing for weeks.
That's right. As we liberal bloggers documented in real time, the right rolled out what I dubbed at the time the Bush off machine. And suddenly the base weren't really Republicans after all, were they? They were independents.
I'm an independent.
Constitutional, conservative, originalist independents who really never supported Bush at all. But somehow they were the same deeply ignorant, very racist, and big fans of Republican Jesus, and completely aligned with the GOP's contemptible agenda in every other way. So Republican rebranding was further helped along by the usual suspect, the legacy media, which made a project out of bulldozing the entire Bush administration right down the memory hole as quickly as possible because they were complicit in making it such a disaster, using every resource in their considerable arsenal to effectively partner with Fox News and hate radio to enable the fake Tea Party lie.
It was then that most of us had our worst fears about the GOP confirmed.
Yeah.
Now that the Republican Party had gotten away with rewriting the history of the Clinton administration and were clearly getting away with rewriting the history of the Bush administration, that ignorant, paranoid, racist base of the party had become addicted to never being held accountable for anything.
And if I may add,
there's an absolute theological component to this of I'm not perfect, I'm just forgiven, that only applies to white Republicans.
And try that, it runs right up to the top of the party. It runs right over to the never Trumpers who might hate Trump, but just try talking to them about their place in this and their accountability to this. And they get very, very angry and very upset that you would even suggest such a thing. And how dare you? And then they block you on social media. Yep. So it's a common conservative thing.
Right. From this point onward, the Republican base took immunity from consequences as their God-given right and would not tolerate any candidate who suggested otherwise. And if there were any glitches in this matrix, they could be smoothed over by all those decades of relentless legacy media both-siderism. Because a corollary of believing that you can never be wrong about anything is the belief if the Republican Party fucks up so badly that it can't be wished away, it doesn't really matter because however bad it was, Democrats are equally bad or automatically worse. However bad George Bush might have been, or as MSNBC's Nicole Wallace rushes through her summary of the Bush administration, my former boss, whatever you think of him, Obama is worse. Bush might have been misguided, but Obama hates America, hates white people, has a death panel all set up for your sainted white grandmother. He refuses to wear a flag pin. His wife is a scary black lady who wants to force your child to eat broccoli. Hell, he wasn't even born here. He's a Kenyan communist sleeper cell. And for good measure, don't forget that Hillary Clinton assassinated Vince Foster. And Bill Clinton not only dealt drugs out of the Mena airport, he has methodically killed off everyone who stood in his way.
And there are pillars. There are pillars of the Republican community in this town, owners of business, members of government who believe all of this shit. And it goes right down to the grassroots. And it's all ridiculous on its face, right? Every one of those lies is ridiculous. And it's nuts, right? But does that even matter? Of course it doesn't matter. Because at this point, we're not dealing with a party, we're dealing with a cult.
Schmidt believes he walks in the footsteps of the gods. Only the world itself will satisfy him.
You do realize that's nuts, don't you?
What? The sanity of the plan is of no consequence.
Then why is that?
Because he can't do it.
And at this point, to anyone who had the eyes to see it, who was bothering to pay any attention, it was clear the GOP was already speeding down a very, very dark road that could only end in authoritarianism and catastrophe, a road that did, in fact, lead straight to Donald Trump. And for the base of the party, the re-election to Donald Trump to a second term held out the promise of solving all those inconvenient problems caused by Trump's first term. So, Trump's first term ended with what? A ludicrous, hysterical claims of all kinds of election fraud, all of which were knocked down by facts, all of which were thrown out of court, except one minor one. And also Trump leading an armed insurrection against the government of the United States. But rather than doing the honorable thing by removing him from office and barring him from ever holding office again, Senate Republicans consciously chose to let him off the hook because they didn't want the mob coming for them. And they knew who the mob loved more than anyone else. And so 4 years later, Trump is reelected, and he pardons the traitors who stormed the Capitol and calls them patriots. And those hysterical, ludicrous claims of election fraud, whatever happened to those, Blue Gal? Well, swearing that you believe them is now a requirement for serving in the Trump administration.
And he raised $500 million on that. That was his most successful scam until crypto.
Because the rubes cannot admit they were wrong.
Right.
They are always the patriots. We are always the villain, no matter what history says. But that's not enough, Blue Gal, because it's never enough. It never will be enough.
Mm-hmm. To satisfy the MAGA mob, all of history must be turned on its head. And the story that shocked me this morning, Donald Trump won in New York, where the judge said that the $500 million settlement against him in New York was excessive, so he doesn't have to pay $500 million to the state of New York anymore.
Right.
He's appealing that because he wants the judgment overturned, not just the fine. Because the money is great, but he wants history to write him as the greatest hero that ever lived.
As the victim of the giant Democrat.
Yeah, and if the fact that he lied to banks remains part of the record, he's got to fight that.
Right. You got to die with the lie.
Right.
And
all the crimes that Trump was charged with, but that never made it to trial, all the crimes for which he was convicted, all of that is part of the Democrats' giant conspiracy against the greatest president ever.
So obvious.
The MAGA mob has been too forgiving and too reasonable for too long. All of that must be avenged. And I found this a few weeks ago, and I think it's a really important kind of encapsulation. This is thank you to Media Matters. On August 28th, 2025, they transcribed Megyn Kelly from the August 26th, 2025 edition of her podcast. And listen carefully. I'm going to read it. We're not going to make you suffer through Megyn Kelly's voice.
You've suffered enough.
Yes, you've suffered enough. But this is a quote from Megyn Kelly. If she, Fed Governor Lisa Cook, committed a felony and we normally wouldn't prosecute it, but the reason we're really prosecuting it is because we're done. We're done with the excess exercise of discretion that would have been in their favor. That's fine by me. I mean, we didn't prosecute Hillary Clinton. We did not go after her. We did not lock her up. We tried to take the high road. They didn't accept the olive branch. They tried to ruin Trump personally, Trump professionally, Trump's presidency, and many around him. They're the ones who locked up Steve Bannon for contempt of Congress, Peter Navarro for contempt of Congress. We didn't try to lock up Merrick Garland when he committed it. It's time. I'm fucking done with taking the high road. They have to suffer, unquote. Now, this is the pinnacle of both-siderism.
Yeah.
You know, they prosecuted Peter Navarro and Steve Bannon. Whereas, look,
martyrs.
Merrick Garland went to court and proved that he doesn't have to show up. That there was classified. It was an ongoing investigation. He didn't have to go and explain it to Congress. They prosecuted Trump, so we have to prosecute Hillary Clinton, regardless of evidence.
Right.
Evidence doesn't enter into it.
Well, and the scales must be balanced and then tipped slightly in their direction. Because
Absolutely.
They can't be the bad guys. They must be the martyr
No, Democrats
heroes.
are the baddies.
Always the baddies.
And we're the patient ones.
We're the patient. They must be, again, the martyrs and the heroes. And, you know, as the saying goes, when the facts go against you and the law goes against you, bang the table harder.
Right.
And that's all she's doing. She's banging the table. And the mob loves this shit.
They love it when she says the F word and gets really up in her high dudgeon about how unfair it all is.
Except it's high dudgeon, but that's okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, dudgeon. I know that.
You're confusing.
I've had a long weekend, folks.
You're confusing her sex dungeon with her high.
Her sex dungeon with high dudgeon. Yes.
Yeah. So what sort of people is Megyn Kelly talking to? You might ask. Well, here's some context. This is from The Independent, May 7th, 2025. Quote, Megyn Kelly now has the third biggest right-wing podcast as subscriptions surge 176%. But here's the key part. Since endorsing Donald Trump the night before the November 2024 elections, the popularity of Megyn Kelly's podcast has soared exponentially, unquote.
Yep.
That's
quid pro quo.
Quid pro quo. I will get down on my knees and service that rapist scumbag, and the mob will love me and they'll reward me. But you got to keep going. Now you have to say, we need to take down the left. We need to prosecute people. We need to throw Barack Obama in jail, because that's the only thing that will balance the scales back to where they should be and where God wants them to be. And of course, behind all the lies at the moment is the king of the liars, Donald Trump. This is from ABC News, July 22nd, 2025. Trump accuses Obama of treason in the Oval Office. Quote, they tried to rig the election, Trump claimed, without presenting evidence, unquote. Now, here's a piece of that Oval Office presser.
Based on what I read, and I read pretty much what you read, it would be President Obama. He started it. And Biden was there with him, and Comey was there, and Clapper, the whole group was there. Brennan, they were all there in a room. Right here, this was the room. This is much more beautiful than it was then, but that's okay. I have nice pictures up. They came out of the vaults. They were in there for 100 years. This is much more beautiful. We have the Declaration of Independence now in the room, which wasn't here. I guess people didn't feel too good about putting it here, but I do. But you know what? If you look at those papers, they have them stone cold, and it was President Obama. It wasn't lots of people all over the place. It was them too. But the leader of the gang was President Obama, Barack Hussein Obama. Have you heard of him? And except for the fact that he gets shielded by the press for his entire life, that's the one look, he's guilty. It's not a question. I like to say, let's give it time. It's there. He's guilty. This was treason. This was every word you can think of. They tried to steal the election. They tried to obfuscate the election. They did things that nobody's ever even imagined, even in other countries.
That was hard to listen to.
What a sick fuck, honest to God, And you can't see the video, but that garish, room got drunk on Goldschlager and threw up into a whorehouse. Look at the Oval Office. Now that's behind him, and he thinks it's beautiful.
Spray painted Home Depot plaster.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Wall glued on a wall.
The same kind of shitty construction that he's been getting away with his entire life. Now he's imposed it on the rest of us.
This is from the Australian Broadcasting Network, August 5th, 2025. Quote, U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi has ordered prosecutors to launch a grand jury investigation into whether former President Barack Obama's administration manufactured intelligence on Russia's interference in the 2016 elections. The Justice Department said late last month it was forming a strike force to assess claims made by Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard about alleged weaponization of the U.S. intelligence community, unquote.
Usually on the Professional Left podcast, we love a strike force. We just are down
strike
with
force.
Strike force any time, any day. But in this case, we have to say no to the strike force.
And I think some wag should present to the grand jury Vladimir Putin in Helsinki saying, yes, he did it.
Yeah. Well,
that would be good.
Again, you're still operating on the plane of existence.
I am on the reality plane, which, one would hope the court would be as well.
Oh, yeah.
We have found out the courts are actually acting on a reality plane for the most part.
Sometimes if you're in the right room, you can't get away with shit. But
yeah, right. So this is Charlie Kirk. And again, via Media Matters, we're not going to make you listen to Charlie Kirk's voice. This is August 12th, 2025 from his podcast. And compare this to Megyn Kelly. It's essentially the same argument. I'm getting a little exhausted doing these segments, and it's fine. Schiff did this. We leaked that. Russiagate conspiracy. Brennan, Clapper. Great. Fine. And I replied to Charlie Kirk, Oh, sweet summer child, don't forget Benghazi, Solyndra, Burisma, AutoPen, Baby Parts, Fast and Furious, Uranium One, Tan Suit, Seth Rich, Pizzagate, her emails, Death Panels, Dominion, Durham Report, Biden Crime Family, and 2,000 Mules. Points off. Back to Charlie Kirk. It's time for action.
That's why you have a strike force, Blue Gals.
A strike force, right?
You have action work.
It's time for action. Mm-hmm. Kash Patel, Dan Bongino, Pam Bondi. These are good people. I think they agree it's time for action. We really are getting to a moment where all these stories are helpful. All these stories are interesting. All these stories get headlines, but I'm not here to mislead you, the audience, honestly. And I feel as if we keep on covering these stories that we could talk forever and ever and ever. But I don't want to mislead those of you right now that want what's best. You could talk forever, but people will be very angry if you can talk endlessly about it but never indict anyone. Ooh. I'm going to yield to Bondi and Bongino and Kash. And JD said something similar. Who's the best? JD is the greatest. JD is not, the ball is not in his court in this sense. He's the vice president of the United States.
They're on first name basis or first basis.
This is
being JD.
He's sucking up to JD all over the place because he knows what's coming. But in some ways, I wonder, was it the best decision to leak this? Shouldn't they have just been indicted and then leak it? What I'm getting at is that it's nice to, okay, great for ratings. Yay, Charlie Kirk show, woo-woo. Enough. But not leak, by the way, release, just to be clear, not leak, release. But at this moment of time, indictments matter infinitely more than press conferences, declassifications, and social media trending. Because here's what's happening. Let me just say this for the administration, buddies that are watching, and for some of the audience. There is an expectation that is now brewing amongst the audience. And where do you get anger in life? Anger comes when expectations and reality are misaligned.
Wait a minute. That's not what Yoda says. Yoda says, fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to the dark side of the force.
Anger comes when expectations and reality are misaligned.
He's had a lot of dates like that, hasn't he? Yeah.
It's a great rule for life. So when you have rising expectations and reality does not meet those expectations, you're going to have angry people. Mm-hmm. So I hope, and it is my great prayer, that this is leading toward massive indictments, because boy, do we need it. I got news for you, everybody. There aren't going to be any indictments.
No.
But Shot Chaser, this is from August 17th, 2025, Charlie Kirk's YouTube channel. And so this is 5 days later, after he said there must be indictments, we need them.
Must be.
Enough social media stuff.
Enough foreplay, for God's sakes. Get on with it.
Reality to meet expectations. Mm-hmm. Quote, Charlie Kirk and General Flynn expose Michelle Obama's dark secret on live TV. In this, all caps, explosive moment, Charlie Kirk and General Michael Flynn take on Michelle Obama like never before. Live on national TV, shocking revelations that were exposed that left millions speechless.
I'm speechless.
From hidden truths to political chaos, this exchange changes everything. Everything in all caps. Unquote. And this is Laura Ingraham next week, probably.
Whoa, she turned me into a newt!
Yeah, I love the love in a hating, sick in my mouth kind of way, Charlie Kirk using the language of the reality TV, bad soap opera, sudden reveal of the evil twin you never knew about that changes everything.
Yeah.
Because that's the promise of every shitty show that's gone on too long, is that the next episode will change everything. Mm-hmm. And he knows that his audience are those morons who live and die by this shit. Yep. And you got to deliver something. You got to give them something. Again, like I think I shouted over you. I apologize. Enough foreplay. Enough of this foreplay nonsense. Let's get on with the fucking. Why isn't Barack Obama in chains? Why isn't he being? But Charlie Kirk, as you said, all but admits that his party's. I'm sorry. How did you put it, Blue Gal?
His party's butt has written a bunch of checks their farts can't cash.
Yeah. Well,
there aren't going to be any indictments of Obama or Michelle Obama or Hillary Clinton, and all of them are hiding behind the court case that says that public figures can't sue for libel.
Right.
And that is the one area where I hate to say it, I agree with Donald Trump on this, which is if it's parody, you should be able to do what you want and say what you want about a public figure. And that was the core of that case, was Jerry Falwell fucking his mother in an outhouse was what the joke was. And it was a joke, and everybody knew it was a joke, and he sued, and he Hustler magazine won because it was clearly parody. But that expanded to you can say anything you want about a public figure and they can't sue you. And this shocking revelations leaving millions speechless about Michelle Obama, she should be able to sue for that.
Oh yeah. And Donald Trump saying point blank, Obama is guilty. This is treason. He not
should
parody.
be able to sue.
He should be able to sue his ass off, and one more crime to go with the rest of the crimes that he'll never do any time for.
But Trump couldn't handle the discovery in court.
No,
for that, and neither could Tulsi Gabbard.
No,
that's just it's all bullshit.
Yeah,
and it is for an audience of one type of person.
Yeah, well, and as you say, in addition to it being nothing but racist bullshit that would evaporate under 30 seconds of questioning in court, the Republican Party is facing another problem, another distinctive problem. By putting incompetent freaks in charge of law enforcement and trying to bring these ludicrous charges against people they don't like, they're proving that they really do suck at the whole courtroom thingy.
Yep.
It's like putting the late lamented Lionel Hutz in charge of the Justice Department. It's just a terrible idea, including the whole whispering to his booze in the bag. What's that? What's that, Scotchy? What are you saying, Scotch? Drink you? I can't drink you now. We're in court. Now, here's just a couple of examples. Now, this is from noted traffic scofflaw and professional tosspot Jeanine Pirro, who has spectacularly failed 3 times in a row at the most basic job of a prosecutor. This is from CNN. Quote, Pirro's office fails 3 times to win felony indictment of alleged attacker of FBI agent. The U.S. Attorney's Office in Washington, D.C., that's run by Donald Trump's appointee, Jeanine Pirro, has struggled to secure a grand jury's approval of at least one little indictment in federal court this month, in an indication of possible issues arising from the office's crackdown on crime. In one case this month related to an FBI agent and an immigration officer allegedly scrapping with a detainee, the federal grand jury in Washington voted no 3 times. Yeah, that's right, 3 times. The court record doesn't say why the grand jury refused to approve the felony assault charge against D.C. resident Sidney Lori Reed each time it was presented over the last month after she was arrested in late July for assaulting or impeding federal officers, unquote. Now, you all thought we were going to talk about the sandwich guy, didn't you? Admit it. You thought we were going to. Nope. But now we are. That's a completely different Jeanine Pirro public embarrassment. This is from NBC News. Quote, grand jury declines to indict man who threw a sandwich at a federal officer in D.C. That's just about the best headline I've read in years, Blue Gal. The former Justice Department employee, and he was a former Justice Department employee, who threw a submarine sandwich at federal officers in Washington, D.C. and came to be known as the Sandwich Guy, wasn't indicted on a federal felony charge. You could get a grand jury to indict a ham sandwich, the saying goes, but in Washington, a federal grand jury just declined to indict a man for throwing a salami sub. The grand jury's decision not to indict Sean Dunn is another sign of pushback from Washington, D.C. residents over Trump's deployment of the National Guard and other federal law enforcement agencies in the city, unquote. Their city, I should add.
Yeah. Who did Jeanine Pirro blame for this federal indictment of a felony
failure.
Not going forward?
Elitist jurors, Blue Gal.
Elitist jurors
wouldn't do what I told them to do, even though I promised I'd share my booze with them. And they know that's a lie because Jeanine Pirro does not share her booze with anyone.
No. But Trump put all these people in charge of law enforcement to make the Fox News viewers happy.
And they're thrilled. But again, as Charlie Kirk has reminded us, where's the beef?
You got
Where
to
are the
cash the
indictments?
check that you wrote.
That's right.
'Cause, I thought that Kash Patel was going to turn the entire FBI upside down and shake it.
Well, and this was Trump's Ukraine strategy as well. Just say there's an investigation, I'll do the rest.
Yeah,
that only lasts one election cycle, one
Right.
campaign cycle. This is an entire law enforcement endeavor that can't just be dismissed out of hand. Once you promised you can deliver all these Democrats to a perp walk and you refuse to deliver, it's like, dude, we're not moving on.
Yeah.
This is something that you told us was going to happen, and where is it?
Well, and the other part of this is with the Kash Patel, Bongino, Pam Bondi trifecta. That's Jeanine Pirro is DC, but this sort of erases the ability of the Republican Congress to hold meaningful hearings on anything Democrats do. Because, well, why are you holding a hearing when Pam Bondi could just indict them?
Right. So easy. So easy.
Yeah.
Let's bring Pam Bondi over and ask her.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
To press charges against these people.
Right. Why aren't you
we don't
pressing
need a lot
charges?
of talking.
No, if they're as guilty as Pam Bondi says they are, let's get her in here, put her under subpoena, and ask her that question.
So, this is the dog who caught the car. And for the Jeanine Pirro public humiliation hat trick, we now go to Oregon Public Broadcasting. This is something I mentioned last week, but I wanted to get all the details out there. Quote, the most illegal search. Judges push back against D.C. criminal charges. Veteran defense lawyers and law enforcement experts have been warning about the potential for overreach since the federal government muscled its way into policing decisions in the nation's capital nearly 3 weeks ago. Inside the federal courthouse in Washington, D.C. on Monday, those tensions broke into open court. A federal judge dismissed a weapons case against a man held in the D.C. jail for a week, concluding he was subject to an unlawful search. And this is the guy who was basically, as they said, arrested for being black with a backpack.
Right.
Quote, it is without a doubt the most illegal search I've ever seen in my life. U.S. Magistrate Judge Zia Faruqi said from the bench. Let me repeat that. The judge said this from the bench. Not to reporters, not in a brief, said it from the bench.
This wasn't I'm sorry, this wasn't on the steps of the courthouse congratulating my cousin Vinny on a well argued.
This is official. This is the official opinion of the court. I'm absolutely flabbergasted at what has happened. A high school student would know this was an illegal search.
But to be fair, would a drunk high school student know that this was?
Would a drunk old lady know? Who's always told she's fantastic when she worked on Fox.
If you're talking about high school students, what if they're drunk off their ass and don't know what they're saying?
The defendant, whose last name is Riley, who entered the courtroom wearing a white skull cap and a bright orange jumpsuit, had been scheduled for a detention hearing. Instead, on Monday morning, the U.S. Attorney's Office moved to dismiss the case it lodged against him 7 days ago. The government has determined that dismissal of this matter is in the interests of justice, prosecutors wrote in court papers. A spokesman for the Department of Justice, because Pirro sent a spokesperson out instead of facing the music herself.
Hey, she was busy.
Yeah, a spokesman for the Department of Justice said Pirro moved to dismiss the charges once she was shown body camera footage of the arrest on Friday. She's the prosecutor for D.C., and she hadn't seen the body cam stuff, and this guy's been in jail for a week.
And somebody had to wake her up out of whatever stupor she was in and say,
we're in trouble.
We're in trouble. You really got to see this.
We're in trouble with the judge.
You either got to see this or you got to say that you saw this and just sign the paper. Just sign the paper. We're in trouble.
Judge Faruqi, who, and this is another critical point, who spent about a dozen years as a prosecutor in that same office. Judges are often former prosecutors, by the way.
Yes, they are.
And they expect the T's to be crossed and the I's to be dotted. And here's what he said, this judge said. He expressed outrage about the charges. We don't just charge people criminally and then say, oops, my bad. I'm at a loss how the U.S. Attorney's Office thought this was an appropriate charge in any court, let alone the federal court, unquote. What is this all about?
Well, it's about quotas. Same thing with the Stephen Miller and his quotas. But it's really about the Epstein files. It's about the Epstein files, which I understand Trump's all over the Epstein files. And we asked the question once again on this podcast, where are the Epstein files? Why haven't they been released? All we are asking is apply the Charlie Kirk test to the Epstein files. Lots of people in the White House, including J.D. Vance and Pam Bondi, apparently have seen the files, know what's in them. So where are the indictments? Where are the subpoenas? All those hundreds of subpoenas of people who we've been told are guilty beyond any doubt.
Pedophilia.
And it's all documented in the files. Where are the perp walks of these people? Where is
phase 2? Where's the phase 2 binder?
Is there no justice, Blue Gal? Where's justice in all of this? And that's what this is all about. I mean, it's about a lot of things, but mostly it's about, please stop talking about the Epstein files. And now we can add to that, since it's all court related, please stop asking about indictments.
Yeah.
We told you these people were criminals. We told you they were traitors. We're lying just the way we're lying about birth certificates and every other goddamn thing. But now you're trying to make us prove this shit and go to court because we said we would?
Be accountable for the bullshit we wrote? Yeah.
And 90% of the base are just mindless, cattle who will do and say whatever the dear leader says and believe whatever they shit in their skull every day. But there's enough people out there who are like Charlie Kirk, who are like, dude, my business is telling these people you're going to deliver. Okay.
Right.
Being your boy is my job. Megyn Kelly, being your bitch is my job. And if you can't
I'm
deliver,
going to big time suck up to J.D. Vance while I'm telling you all this.
Yeah, because he's, after you croak, he's going to be in charge.
Right.
But, I got to give him something. I can't keep coming out to the mob and saying, give me another 2 weeks. This is the Friedman unit all over again. It's a million Friedman units. In a couple of weeks, in a few weeks, in a little while, we'll have indictments and things will come to. No, it's never going to happen because they got nothing. They're lying. And it's beginning to stink because this is not a campaign cycle. This is a 4-year term in office. Yep. And a lot of people are watching and waiting, and we're promised things that aren't coming to pass. Now, we're going to do what we did last Tuesday, and in our news roundup, we're going to just focus on one local news story. There's a lot of news out there. Most of it's really scary and bad. We'll do that in the Thursday show, or we might talk about it tomorrow with Bob Seska on the Wednesday show.
I think we probably will.
Because, these things come up when we talk
Also, the worst episode of Star Trek I can remember.
Yeah. Oh, it was bad. Strange New Worlds. Bad episode.
Strange New Worlds. It was really bad. Bad episode. Bad.
It had like 2 elements that I was like, oh, that's kind of funny. And the rest of it was just, oh,
and
Jesus
we love
Christ.
Patton Oswalt, and he was in it.
We love Patton Oswalt. It just, man, a swing and a miss. So what we're going to do is today is talk about one local story we think is representative of something that would interest you and might even affect you directly. It's about a woman named Julie Hines. She's the owner of a place called Country Junction in Clinton, Illinois, which is about 50 miles east of us. So it's right where we are, central Illinois.
There's a big yarn store in Clinton, too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. There's an antique mall and a yarn store. There's just, it's one of those places. It's a little bit of everything store. It sells clothes and antiques and flower pots and popcorn and tchotchkes and that sort of thing. Stop in there, a little bit of everything in there. And the video you're going to hear excerpted was produced by the Illinois Retail Manufacturers Association, which is called IRMA, which, here's a fun fact, is partially funded by the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity, DCEO, the mighty DCEO. I know people who have worked there, and they used to fund my department when I worked for the city of Chicago back in the day. So I kind of understand the chain of funding that goes on here. And as you might imagine, as an Illinois Retail Merchant Association, IRMA is not exactly a hotbed of leftist agitators.
Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to carry this line anymore. It's a beautiful line. Normally, shipping charge for all of this is $49. When we got the bill this year, it was $497. Astronomical. We can't afford it. So recently, we are noticing a lot of tariff issues. Every day I get hundreds of emails from all of the companies that I buy from. They're trying to figure it out just as much as we're trying to figure out. We're trying to adjust to the best that we can. It affects everything from a $1 item to a $100 item. A good example is in our boutique clothing. We know clothing comes from all different companies and countries across the world. All of these items are now getting tariffs put on them. I have to push that cost onto the customer. I don't like it. I wish it would stop, but it makes the overhead so much more higher.
Like so many other retailers in Illinois, probably where you live too, all over the country, tariffs are killing this woman's business. They are, in fact, what people have said they were all along. They're a tax. They're a huge tax that she is forced to pass along to her customers. But unlike COVID, which also damaged her business, tariffs are entirely man-made. They're entirely the result of policy being done by Washington, and there's no secret whose policy it is. And yet, here's how Julie identifies the culprits behind the policy that might drive her out of business.
Since post-COVID, this has been the most stressful time for retailers. I wish the government would kind of stop and slow down and think about the small businesses, because the mom and pops like us, we're the ones that keep America alive. And I just keep plugging along. I guess as a small business owner, I would say to all of the politicians out there, think about us.
So once again, we see people who cannot name the real threat, either out of fear or out of years of legacy media conditioning. It's not Trump, it's the government. It's not the Republican Party, it's all those politicians out there. And frankly, until we start seeing people like Julie summoning the courage to be honest about where the real threat is coming from, please don't expect to see any real change in how the Republican Party and the legacy media do business anytime soon.
And I got to say, 90% of her customers are Fox News watching Republicans.
I'm sure they are.
In rural Illinois. That's just the fact. So she's not going to come out against Trump in a public forum.
Well, if you're operating any retail business, in Illinois especially, I mean, this, forget about Mississippi or Alabama, but in Illinois, especially central Illinois, odds are a bunch of your customers are Trump people and a bunch of them aren't, and a bunch of them are just never voted in their life. And if you're trying to sell merchandise to these people, you can't afford to offend anybody.
Right, exactly.
So you take the least offensive line, which is the one you've been taught since you were a child, by the legacy media. It's the both sides. It's politicians that are the problem.
Politicians in Washington are the problem. Yeah.
And not one specific person or one specific guy or one specific party. It's
even
politicians.
Though this is all Trump.
It's all Trump. And I'm sure if this woman follows any news at all, she goddamn well knows it's Trump, because she's talking to other retailers and sharing their frustration and anger and fear with other people. And at some point in those conversations, because I know people in retail in Illinois, right where we live personally, who've been having those conversations. And you know what? Who comes up a lot? Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Fucking Donald Trump comes up an awful lot. Republicans come up an awful lot in those conversations. And I guarantee you during some of these conversations that Trump's name has come up more than once. And there's just this defensive mechanism that we cannot go around calling Nazis Nazis.
Right.
Because that's bad for business. And again, until you can say the truth out loud and not be afraid, nothing's going to change very much.
No. And they're not going to get what they want when it comes to indicting Obama.
No.
Or Hillary. Or, this is going to be yet another disappointment. And the thing is, they're in charge of everything right now. I'm confident that A, they will find a Democrat to blame. And B, they will say the deep state is even deeper than we thought. Well, and that's it. And the deep state can't sue you for talking about it. That's right. The deep state. That is, what did you said that was the Nazi scapegoat. Oh, no, it's the 1984, Emmanuel Goldstein. Yeah. The eternal enemy who's behind everything, who's always just out of reach. Yep. Just out of deep state. That's right. The deep state. And deep state can't punch back because deep state doesn't exist. Just in the ether. Yeah.
The deep state is keeping Kash Patel and Pam Bondi and Pete Hegseth and Donald Trump from
really
doing,
lowering the hammer on all those Democratic crimes.
right, for doing what they promised to do. It wasn't their fault, because it's never their fault, Blue Gal. It's never, ever, ever their fault.
No accountability, as you said. Look, feel free to write us at proleftpodcast@gmail.com. That address goes to both of us. We love hearing from you. Be aware that if you write to us at any of our addresses, we reserve the right to read your email or U.S. Postal Service. Go, Postal Unions! Letter on the air unless you say otherwise.
Please, pretty please, with sugar on top, share our show on social media. And if you love this podcast, please get someone else to listen to. Go down to Clinton, Illinois, and ask Julie to give a listen. She might enjoy what we have to say and our challenge her, because we're not rebuking her. We're challenging her to come out and say what she knows in her heart to be true, because I'm sure she's a good Christian woman. And thank you for doing that.
Hey, Driftglass, how are the Internet Kitties doing this week?
Well, the Internet Kitties, as you know, live on hope, and they hope you all had a safe and peaceful Labor Day. And reminder that these two goofs, that'd be Blue Gal and myself, will be on with Bob Seska tomorrow.
On Wednesday, we're on with Bob Seska.
Let's think about living. Think about living. Let's think about loving. Think about loving. Let's think about the hooping and the hopping and the bopping and the lovey-dovey. Let's forget about the wine and the crying, the shooting and the dying, and the fellow with a switchblade knife. Let's think about living. Let's think about life.
The Professional Left podcast is recorded under a Creative Commons license. Copyright 2024-25, GGBG Productions.